Hola a todos. Hoy vamos a analizar los usos del subjuntivo en español. So today we're going to talk about the uses of the subjunctive in Spanish. Now the subjunctive would be one of three moves in Spanish, and it is used to talk about uncertainty and is used for subjective situations, whereas the indicative is more based in reality. So that's a big difference between the indicative and the subjunctive, okay? Many students are fearful of the subjunctive because it is pretty complicated, but hopefully after watching this video, you will have a better understanding of how to use it. Now I must mention that this video is not going to concentrate on the formation, but it is going to concentrate on the context in which the subjunctive is required, okay? And for the most part, this will be the present subjunctive because there are other subjunctive forms but that we'll get to in the future. But these are the general contexts in which the subjunctive is required, okay? Now, I must also mention that the subjunctive requires two subjects, and the subjunctive will be part of the dependent clause or the subordinate clause. So when you have two subjects that are connected by K, the subordinate clause will use a subjunctive or will require the subjunctive. Just remember that. So just remember that when we get into the different contexts, all right? So let's start. The first context is going to be for desires or wishes. Espero que llueva. You see? Espero, first person singular, and then the second part we have llueva. It rains, right? Third person singular. So you have to use two subjects and they will be connected by que, right? Espero que llueva. Other verbs of desire would be desear or querer. Ojalá is not a verb, but it's an expression that we use to express desires, okay? So ojalá means like hopefully, right? And it is worth noting that we can say ojalá que or ojalá, but we must use the subjunctive with it. So you could say ojalá que llueva, hopefully it rains, or ojalá llueva, hopefully it rains, okay? Now if I want to, so now I'm going to show you why why the subjunctive requires two subjects. So if I want to use the verb querer, which is to want, and I say quiero hacer ejercicio, I want to work out. That's an infinitive. But why do we use the infinitive? Because we're talking about the same person, the first person singular. I quiero hacer ejercicio. But if I change the subject after, if I want to refer to someone else, then I have to use the que followed by the subjunctive. So, quiero que ustedes hagan ejercicio. I want you to work out. So you see the subject changes. So we use que when we want to change the subject, right? So that's just an example of that. 2. Emotions. Me gusta que mis alumnos lo entiendan. I like that my students understand it, or it pleases me that my students understand it. So you see that that is an emotion. And examples of other verbs, alegrarse, sorprender, enojar. So any verb that expresses emotion, right, can be used with the subjunctive if we have two subjects. Remember, that's important, right? So second context, emotions. 3. Doubt. El hombre duda que sea peligroso. The man doubts that it is dangerous. This is from the verb dudar, to doubt. I also would have included no creer, no pensar. Now, that constitutes doubt as well, right? Even though they're verbs that have been negated, right? Because creer means to believe, so no creer means to not believe, which is a form of doubt, right? And there's also negation, but we get into that. Quizás means maybe or perhaps. We can use quizás with the indicative or the subjunctive. But when we use it with the indicative, it means that we are more certain of what, we are more certain. But if we use it with the subjunctive, that means that we are less certain. We are not as certain, okay? So, doubt. 4. Negation. No hay nadie que sepa español. There is no one who knows Spanish. So we use the subjunctive when we have two different subjects in a negative construction connected by que, right? So this goes back to the same no creer, no pensar. Even though those express doubt, they also express negation. So no creo que, I do not believe that, and then you use the subjunctive. So no creer and no pensar represent two uses. They represent, excuse me, they represent doubt and they represent negation, right? So yes. 5. Recommendations or suggestions. Nuestro profesor nos recomienda que estudiemos cuanto antes. Our teacher recommends that we study as soon as possible, right? So any verb that is used for recommendations or suggestions, we would use the subjunctive, provided that we have two subjects, okay? Aconsejar, sugerir, okay? Now let's go over to the other side. 6. We have impersonal expressions. And if you do not know what an impersonal expression is, it refers to an expression that will begin in the third person singular. So it's like saying in English, it is necessary, it is important, it is blah, blah, blah. It doesn't refer to someone specific, at least the beginning of it, right? So let's see the example. Es importante que nos despertemos temprano. It is important that we wake up early. So this is what we will call an impersonal expression. You will see the third person singular form at the beginning, and it will be, and of course it will not refer to anyone specific. So that's how you would identify an impersonal expression. It is sad that, it is great that, right? But there are some exceptions when it comes to this usage, because not all impersonal expressions will carry the subjunctive. The expressions that I'm about to show you all require the indicative because they express certainty. For example, es verdad que, it is true that. Es obvio que, it is obvious that. Es cierto que, it is certain that. Es evidente que, it is evident that. And está claro que, it is clear that. So all of those require the indicative because they express certainty. However, if we were to make them negative, we would use the subjunctive. For example, okay, es verdad que Juan sabe la verdad. It is true that Juan knows the truth, right? But if I make it negative, no es verdad que Juan sepa la verdad. It is not true that Juan knows the truth, right? So this is why negation is a key context in which the subjunctive is required. So all those expressions that I told you express certainty, we would use them with the indicative. But if we use them in the negative, we must use the subjunctive. 7. Personal assessments. And with this usage, we're going to use the verb parecer. So the structure here is going to be, well, we could use other persons, but we use the first person singular as an example. Me parece followed by an adjective or an adverb, followed by que, followed by el subjuntivo. Me parece triste que nadie sepa la verdad. I find it sad that no one knows the truth. So we would use the subjunctive with personal assessments or like opinions, but only when we use an adjective or an adverb. So if I wanted to use parecer without an adjective, I would say me parece que nadie sabe la verdad. I think that no one knows the truth, because parecer in that context would be the same thing as saying pienso que or creo que. So with the verb parecer, if we use an adjective or an adverb, we have to use the subjunctive. If we do not use an adjective or an adverb, then we do not use the subjunctive. The subjunctive is only required if an adjective or an adverb is used. As you see here, me parece triste que nadie sepa la verdad. Okay? So these are 7 contexts in which the subjunctive is required. And we continue. So we continue with our breakdown of the context in which the subjunctive is used. Context number 8 is going to be for commands, prohibitions, or requests. Tome mucha agua. Drink a lot of water. Of course, this relates to the imperative, right? And this will be the formal imperative, right? The formal singular imperative. Tome mucha agua. If you're giving a command to someone that you do not know, you would use the subjunctive form, because the subjunctive and the imperative would have similar forms, okay? Te estoy pidiendo que saques la basura. I am asking you to take out the trash. That's a request. And we would use the verb pedir, which is to answer or to request. Examples of verbs would be dejar, insistir, or decir. Now when it comes to the verb decir can be used in the indicative, but when it is used in the indicative, it would be used to transmit information. For example, ella me dice que está cansada. She tells me that she is tired. Now, if I want to use decir in the subjunctive, I would say ella me dice que saque la basura. Use the same example. She tells me to take out the trash. Ella me dice que saque la basura. So if we use it in the subjunctive, it is a command. But if we use it in the indicative, it will be used to transmit information. So that's a key difference there. 9. Aunque. In the subjunctive, aunque means even if. So it's used to talk about hypothetical situations. Voy a la fiesta aunque nadie me invite. I am going to the party even if no one invites me. So that's a hypothetical situation. Aunque can also be used in the indicative, and in the indicative it would mean even though or although, right? For example, voy a seguir caminando aunque me duelen las piernas. I am going to continue walking although my legs hurt me. My legs are hurting. Voy a seguir caminando aunque me duelen las piernas. I'm going to continue walking even though my legs hurt. So, aunque can be used in the indicative as well. 10. Future events. The subjunctive is used with the following time expressions. Cuando, hasta que, en cuanto, tan pronto como, después de que. For example, me sentiré mejor cuando lleguen mis padres. I will feel better when my parents arrive. So the time expression here will be cuando. So we would use the subjunctive after these time expressions, but we would only use them if we're talking about future events. As you see, me sentiré, I will feel better. Me sentiré mejor. So that's something that is that's talking about the future. So you only use the subjunctive with these expressions if you're talking about the future. Okay? Let's go over to the last context. And these are going to be expressions with their conjunctions. And they require the subjunctive. Okay? Para que, sin que, a menos que, con tal de que, and antes de que. When it comes to con tal de que, there are other similar expressions such as siempre y cuando, mientras, or a condición de que, because that is talking about a condition, as long as. Okay? So for example, te prestaré mi reloj con tal de que me lo devuelvas mañana. I will lend you my watch as long as you return it to me tomorrow. So that's a condition. I would have used the con tal de que. And I could, in that place, I could use mientras, a condición de que, or siempre y cuando. So all of these require the subjunctive, and as you would notice, the subject changes. That's a fundamental rule when it comes to the subjunctive. Okay? So these are 11 contexts in which the subjunctive is mandatory. And this brings us to the end of this lesson. Espero que ustedes lo entiendan. Espero que este tema esté mucho más claro ahora mismo. Gracias por ver y nos vemos.